Crazy, Jimmy.
I'd like to call the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission to order. And asking everybody with cell phones and pagers in the audience and on the board to turn them off, please. And this meeting will be live and repeated on Saturday, April 5th at 1 o'clock, and April 6th on Sunday at 7 p.m. Anybody wishing to speak to this body, there are speaker slips in the back. Fill them out and bring them down to the clerk, and we will hear from you in the order that we received them. So with that, will you please call roll?
Jones.
Here.
Pillsbury.
Here.
Dickinson.
Here.
Peters McEwen. Collin.
Here.
Yee.
Here.
Nilo.
Here.
Shelby. Here. Leary. Here. Natoli.
Here.
Waters.
Here.
We have a quorum.
So will you please lead us in the pledge?
Okay, if you'll all join us, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's why it's really good.
Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 1?
Yes, we have consultant update, community programming goals and resources alignment.
Mr. Edgar?
Mr. Waters, members of the Commission, good afternoon. My name is Bill Edgar. The purpose of today's meeting is to consider our recommendations regarding a compromise proposal developed by the grantee organizations themselves pertaining to the realignment and the funding for community programming. As you know, we've had 2 long meetings pertaining to this subject and many hours of discussion and testimony and debate. And at your March meeting, the Commission took action reducing the total allocation for community funding by 25% to a total of $1,160,000. This afternoon, we've presented a final report for your consideration. As you're aware, and as a result of the Commission's decision to reduce the total funding for community program, SCCC proposed some specific grantee allocations as well as some recommendations for channel use sharing, which after extensive discussions with KBIE and Access Sacramento, they were supported. A great deal of credit needs to go to grantee organizations, particularly SCCC, Liz Rhodes, and a number of the Access board members and Access Sacramento itself for getting this done. Since the proposal itself, I think, supports the Commission's desire for change, although it's not as radical as the ones that I originally made, it is within the Commission's financial parameters. We believe that the Commission should approve the compromise proposal that's being before you. You have our recommendations, which are set forth in the report as follows, and we're recommending that you adopt the resolution that's been placed on your desk this afternoon. To number 1, approve the Commission's intent to allocate community funding as set forth in the report for 2003-04, 04-05, 05-06 fiscal years. It's understood that if additional money in excess of that set forth in the report became available, that would be allocated annually during the budget process by the Commission and in the Commission's sole discretion. Number 2, we're recommending that you direct the Executive Director and the Legal Counsel to draft and negotiate new channel use agreements to conform to the sharing concepts outlined in the report. Now, more specifically, if you go to page 2 in the report itself, you'll see the recommendations spelled out. as you know from your prior experience, we are recommending that you express your intent for allocating community programming for the next 3 fiscal years. We know you can't legally bind one commission to another, but for example, in your capital improvement programs, you adopt your intention to adopt those things, and that's what we're recommending at this point. We're doing that because, quite frankly, the grantee organizations themselves need opportunities to plan. And we have a lot more things that Rich has on his plate that he needs doing other than this, doing it every year. So we are recommending that this be a 3-year intent program. And we also, in part 2 of the recommendations, are recommending the current configuration of allocation of channels be amended to include allocation, contractually allocate cable 73 to education during the school year from 7 to 5, and cable 74, 8 to 2 p.m. During the school year. Those are the recommendations that we have before you. I think you're well aware of the background. We'll, of course, be happy to answer any questions or assist you in any way you want.
Mike?
I'd just like to move the recommendation. I think we've heard enough, and I think there's been enough discussion unless there is more discussion by the board and/or public.
I would second that.
And we have a motion and a second. Roger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions for you, Bill. Firstly, one you spoke to regarding a multi-year indication of intent. Was that initiated by the grantees, or was that initiated by the commission staff or you as the consultant? What was the source of it? Because
This has always been a concern of the grantee organization. It has been a concern also of the staff that the grantee organization simply did not have enough planning time to develop their budget proposals, and quite frankly, we at the staff level just felt this was not really very productive to do this every year, so we're recommending the 3-year process.
I don't necessarily agree with your characterization of the productivity of this exercise, but I'm not so sure that you avoid it every year just by indicating an intent, depending on what the circumstances are. But in any event, I was just curious where it came from, because I don't remember us doing this before, except in one other instance where we gave some indication of what we would expect to commit to over a series of years, and I think you may have referred to that with the capital expenditure. The second question I had was this allocation specifically, and I want to make it clear that I am making no comment with respect to that amount suggested for KVIE or anything to do with KVIE in my questions by inference, implication, or any other method, direct, indirect, or otherwise. What would the 283 as a, was that a sufficient disclaimer, Mr. Jones? What would the 283 mean for Metro Cable 14? I didn't go back and look at what Metro Cable 14 is getting this year, for example, so what would it mean?
On an operating basis, it pretty much means that we will absorb within the existing budget, picking up the city of Rancho Cordova as a client, as a entity that we're going to cablecast, and will probably mean as we get into the final budget thing that there will be a change in the policies for the non-parental entities being cablecast. Right now, your policies have been pretty consistent for 5 or 6 years, maybe even a little bit longer. If you're in this chamber, the city council chamber, an outside entity gets cablecast for free. If you're interested in being cablecast and you're an outside entity, the first one is on the Cable Commission's nickel. After that, it's on a incremental cost basis, and several other pieces where we've encouraged other entities to be cablecast. We've got to put the budget together at 283 and then factor in the Rancho Cordova piece and see what that means.
But you're projecting that even if an organization, a board wanted to hold its meetings here, if it wasn't apparent, then there'd be a charge for it to do so? Is that the implication, Rich?
Probably, but not at the extent it would have been had we gone to the core budget amount at 175 we discussed last month.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other probable change of significance that you foresee?
No. Most of it's going to show up in the non-parental entities, as I understand the look at the budget now.
Okay. I notice from a wordsmithing standpoint, by the way, that in the resolution that's been given to us that the resolution says in the first whereas that we reduced the total allocation for community funding by 25% at our March 6th meeting. I thought we just expressed our intention to use that 25% number as a target. We didn't actually reduce the allocation, right?
That's
so,
your advisory.
Yeah.
To that.
But more importantly, in the first resolve clause, it actually sets forth the amounts. This doesn't indicate intent, but actually indicates allocations shall be. And I wondered if that, in fact, first of all, can we do that for future years at this point to begin with? And secondly, I thought, consistent with the way, Bill, you had written your recommendation, we were still at this juncture expressing our intent. So what's staff's view of those?
Well, one commission cannot bind another commission.
Right.
So, as I explained before, this is expressing your intent that these funding allocations would be available. It is the current commission's intent for the next 3 years.
So this resolve clause should be phrased in terms of intention?
Right. We'll make those changes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that and then the final question I have at this point is related to that. We decided last time to reduce at least 25, or reduce 25%, but there was expression by some, including me, that there needed to be a recognition that depending on what budgets looked like come June, that it could be reduced even further. And I honestly don't know where a majority of the commission is in that regard, and I know that causes anxiety with grantees. I'm sorry for that. But I'm assuming if we phrase this in terms of intention, it still leaves the final budget decisions to that June meeting. Is that correct?
That would be my understanding. Yeah, this would be an advisory or an intention document. Your decisions are still held and always held to the budget.
Okay. The reason, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to articulate that, and it's the reason I think Ms. Collin voted against this last time, was that it may well be when we get, particularly for the Board of Supervisors, when we get into our budget hearings, we may find ourselves in a position where we think we have to reevaluate what we're intending to do here. That's my personal projection of what may happen, and so I don't want that to come as a surprise if it does happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it would be unfair, though, Roger, to allocate, or at least appear to allocate these revenues to these different entities and then turn around and say, come June, we're going to actually cut you in half or reduce the amount of money that we're looking at giving them here as a budget. Obviously, they have to prepare a budget just like we do, and so I would be opposed to suggesting that come June that we reanalyze this and basically maybe start the process all over again.
Well, I understand your comment, and apart from I don't think we'd start all over again, but I'm not sure that, unfortunately, fairness is going to have much to do with the budget process, horribleness is going to have a lot more to do with it, I suspect. So that may just put us in a very difficult position. So.
Any other comments? All right, this is our third time that this has been on our agenda, and we've devoted over 5 hours to public testimony, and I'm going to take the final testimony today. There's 10 public speakers have signed up. 3 of them represent the grantees and 7 for public testimony. So we'll go ahead with a 3-minute limit and start this with Tony Salmanaka. Please come up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commission members, staff, Access Sacramento supporters. I'm Tony Salamanca, the chairman of the Access Sacramento Board of Directors. We're a local community members that volunteer for the board. I work personally with Primerica Financial Services here in Sacramento, and it is a subsidiary of Citigroup, therefore I have another job. And I'm a longtime resident of beautiful Elk Grove. On behalf of the Access Sacramento Board, I concur with the staff's recommendation regarding the grantees' intent to fund and the sharing of the cable channels 73 and 74. We hope with a focus on local education programming for students, faculty, staff, parents, including the non-English speaking that we have in our community. Once cable funds and fees return to the 2001-2002 revenue levels, we ask that the Commission restore access funding equal to or above the current level. In conclusion, on behalf of the Access Sacramento Board of Directors, we thank you, your staff, the opportunity to share an input in the crafting of a comprehensive funding plan, including the cable channel sharing according to what was submitted by your staff. We too are sensitive to the present fiscal shortfall that affects us all. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions?
Just
Thank you, Tony.
Common ground.
Thank you for all the work you did behind the scenes to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tillman? Welcome, Jan.
Good afternoon, Chairman Waters and Commission members. I'm Jan Tillman, Vice President, Content at KVIE. Hi, Roger. No, just kidding.
I'm not here, Jan.
No, that's right. I want to thank you for all of your patience throughout this very long process, and especially thank Mr. Edgar for his leadership in getting us to this point. We think that the compromise that is recommended today is a graceful transition from the past to a new future. KVIE supports the recommendations made by Mr. Edgar. Thank you.
Jan. Thank you, Jan.
Thanks, Jan.
Fleischman?
Chairperson Waters, members of the Commission, good afternoon. My name is John Fleischman, and I'm chair for the Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium. The SEC Board of Directors realizes these are very difficult times for many businesses and social service agencies. Many budgets have already been cut, and others are certainly expecting further reductions. Like other boards and commissions, the Cable Commission is doing their best to cope with these difficult times. SECC would like to publicly thank the Commission for hearing the concerns from the grantee organizations. We especially want to, again, thank Bill Edgar for his tireless work. The SECC Board and staff would like to acknowledge the Access Sacramento Board for working through the compromise presented to the Commission today. SECC fully supports the compromise as proposed. If the Commission is interested, we do have a draft program schedule, we work very quickly, for the program channels 73 and 74. This is the programming we tend to operate on those channels, so I'll leave that here with staff.
Again, on behalf of the SCCC Board, I want to thank you for your efforts in support of the grantee organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I guess before we get any further into this, you talked about 73 and 74. I think it should be noted that it looks like a real plus. We're going to get them back to 17 and 18, or roughly those numbers, which puts them in the pecking order of the channel surfers, and I think that's a real plus because I remember we went through that a few years ago when they got bumped way up there in the 70s. So again, I think this is a plus that we bring them back to the surfers that might just catch them and want to watch them.
Absolutely, and as Mr. Salamanca said, we really look forward to bringing this educational programming forward.
Great, thank you very much. Ross Erickson.
Thanks, John.
Ross?
Commissioner Waters, Commission. I'm just really glad that you took into consideration the other options. I am both an ROP student of the Television Occupations course and a member of Access Sacramento. From the looks of it, there's only one other class member here of mine today. We really appreciate you taking it into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. John Webb.
There's nothing we can do about the TANF.
Welcome, John.
Good afternoon. Chairman Waters, members of the Commission, my name is John Webb. I want to direct you to the packet of information that you should have before you. You'll see that there's a copy of a letter sent by Rich Espasto, and this is to myself. It's been blacked out, but I have no problem letting the world know that this letter was sent to me. This is in response to my request to identify specific categories of revenue reported by the cable companies to you, the Commission. Rich's response to me was that you can see in the third paragraph here that a certification from the cable company that the numbers it used to compute its payment are correct, and that specific categories B through K are not routinely specifically identified in the certification. And this is very much in non-standard compared to the rest of the country. Most communities in the country require that the cable company report in much more detail. In addition, most communities require that the cable companies report the number of subscribers. I direct your attention to the last page, and you'll see that the Cable Television Ordinance 5.50.602. In that second paragraph towards the end, it says that you have the franchisee must identify in detail the sources and amounts of gross revenues, in detail, not merely a certified statement. If you would like to pursue this further, and I urge you to do so and adapt the procedures used by other cities in similar situations, there is a form that you could direct the cable companies to fill out and report to you when they send in their checks, and it indicates the specific amounts in each category. You have, according to the Cable Television Ordinance, you have the authority to do that. It simply requires that you direct your staff to do that. Since we're talking about large amounts of money, I suggest you do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Don, go ahead.
Just with the items before us, I'm kind of curious with this form. Is this information that is there some reason why we couldn't ask for this information? It would seem to me that this might be helpful for commission members and probably for staff if it wasn't necessarily done monthly. I guess they pay quarterly. Is this something we could ask for? And it's not proprietary, I would assume, if other jurisdictions use it. Is it?
I believe the language is that you could ask for it. The practice that we've had has been to let the county auditor, who is your auditor, audit to his standards, his or her procedures, protocols, and to give you an initial assessment or an audit report. And then it would be my practice, if there are any findings or anything that they identify at that first look, any concerns whatsoever, then they would come back and you would order a more detailed audit against this chart or any chart the auditor might come up with.
Yeah, I guess I was just looking at this, Rich, it just seems to me this might be fairly simple for a commissioner. For example, if you look at this, you can, it gives you kind of a running tally. Obviously, the meat behind it goes into the, the money is turned back to the franchise owner by the franchisee. But again, some of these things seem to me that they should be able to know, and it would give you some, point in time to measure, the services that are being used. And I would assume that a lot of this information is kept by the cable companies anyway. So I guess I would just be curious as to, maybe not all of these things, I just look at this list, there are some things here though that are pretty basic information that, besides just a check and that they certify, whatever the amount that comes to the county, and that's for audit purpose, but from the standpoint of knowing subscribers quarter to quarter, and some of the, different services that are used and so forth, i.e. basic service, which is required under our ordinance, those types of things, seem to me that might be useful information, just so we get quarterly reports on different things. So again, maybe it's not, we aren't going to make a decision, it's not on the agenda today. I'm just, again, I'd like to maybe have a little more background as to maybe having a tool that would be helpful both to commission staff, obviously who's much more day-to-day on this, but also to commission members and to the general public. It's, again, without burdening our franchisees with a lot of extra reporting, so.
Right. Be happy to look into it and get back to you.
Okay.
I think part of it is to let's see what the auditor comes up with as well.
Yeah.
I'll add that the licensing ordinance has similar language, but the philosophy behind the language, the licensing ordinance, and the legal settlements that it came from, was to be sure that we considered your last comment, Mr. Matoli, that the burden of reporting on of the cable companies was balanced. For example, there was much more extensive reporting on affirmative action issues, and we've gone in and out of that as appropriate. There was prevailing wage rate reporting. There was detailed construction progress reporting, and a lot of that was ratcheted back in '89 as a matter of kind of philosophy and how we managed the cable operators. Be happy to look into it and bring this back to you with a
Yeah,
more
I wasn't
thorough
even thinking
analysis.
audit context as much as I was, Rich, just from general information. If you knew how many subscribers were in the system, that might be a question that could come to any one of us, and point in time you have something that's current as of a quarter. And obviously with different cable providers, there'd be a, be a cumulative total. And some of this other information, again, may or may not be useful to folks, and so I would think that any list we would develop, whether it was for audit purposes or not, but I just think from a standpoint of general information for commission and for general public, might make good sense too, because it's easily read, easily understandable, so.
And I would agree that that's a good idea, Don, because whether we use it or not, at least it gives us, so when we run into our constituents out there, how many this, how many that, we'll have it on the...
And I don't know about this, I'm not saying this list is the list I've used, but
I'm just saying the general information back is... Okay. Mr. Jones.
Hey, Rich, do you know whether, does the auditor have available to him or her information from the franchisees and licensees with sufficient specificity to answer these questions already?
I'd have to let the auditor address that, but in the engagement letter that I gave you at the last meeting, it lays out the detail or the questions that the auditor is supposed to be looking at, including some special instances or examples we were concerned about on how franchise fees were calculated. I don't know if this answers your question or not, Mr. Jones, but the auditor reported that he has visited with the cable company, has been provided copies of boxes of documents, and was engaged as of about 10 days ago.
Okay. I mean, obviously, we want to collect the information in as efficient and unburdensome way as possible, but in just reading the copy of the ordinance that was provided to us a moment ago, and I'm assuming this is a copy of our ordinance, there's some language in here that says that the audit will be conducted, blah, 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 identifying any information which the board of directors of the commission deems necessary to obtain for the purpose of administering the franchise under the provisions of this chapter. So it seems to, our ordinance gives us some latitude in determining what we think would be most useful, and then that, I guess, gets communicated by you to the auditor, and then that information gets collected by the county auditor. So I think it would be useful for us to have it come back in some form so we could have a look at what it is we're asking, and have the auditees also have a chance to talk about, whether and to what extent it's complete and burdensome or not burdensome. But I concur in your suggestion. I think it would be useful to have it come back.
Will do.
Okay. William Bronstonimus, I'm sorry, I can't read the handwriting.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm not an insider with
Name,
access.
please,
I'm
'cause
sorry.
I blew the name. Would you put
My
your
name
name?
is William Bronston, MD, Dr. Bill Bronston.
Oh, MD, I'm sorry,
And,
okay.
I'm the head of an organization called the Tower of Youth, which is a large regional high school media arts organization, and I've spoken with you before. I'm not happy about the agreement, and I don't believe that this is really a real compromise. I believe that there's been a shameful effort to reduce the budget of a crucial organization in this town that has no duplicate. First of all, you've heard from close to 100 people on this issue from the most diverse possible population that have no other venue in order to articulate and express their independent politics, values, and social and cultural identities in this community. The commercial media is completely been militarized and commercialized at such an awesome level that I cannot watch television any longer, especially during this terrible time in our history. The second thing is that I think there has to be a commitment on your part, in good faith, to do a very extensive needs assessment, a deep, meaningful needs assessment about the role and the value of the kind of programming that only exists in Access Sacramento's bailiwick. Thirdly, I really support a rigorous, unflinching assessment of the reporting that you're getting from your money source in terms of the revenues and fees. Because to pussyfoot around with a massive multi-zillion-dollar corporation like that that has all the lawyers and all the bookkeepers and all the accountants, when you count on this money, is, I think, nonfeasance at least. And finally, I would hope that given the unfair cut that is being imposed on Access Sacramento at a 35% level, even though it came from an absolutely ungrounded and arbitrary 75% origin, that you will revisit this situation if our economy ever gets restored somehow or another at the federal, state, and county level, and return the resources in order to not just mildly rebuild this particular resource for the community, but massively reconsider the urgent need in building social capital that only comes from the kind of channeling and programming that exists on Access Sacramento. I'm very, very concerned. I've been watching this process, and I just feel that with all of the negative blows that we are getting at so many levels every day these days, that this cutback and rollback is not good, and I oppose it bitterly. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Joe Sullivan. Welcome, Joe.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Sullivan, president of the Sacramento County Taxpayers League, and I'm very, very interested in this particular program. We were particularly excited by an exercise. My board became exercised when they read Bill's report, and he mentioned that the that is the 30 meg system will go into the many millions of dollars. And as far as we can determine, those are going to be taxpayer dollars before we're finished. So it became very high on our agenda. We recognize that you can't derail this train right now. You've been down the track far enough to know that you're going to go ahead with exactly what Bill recommends. However, in June, we may have the opportunity to take a look at it, and we will, from the standpoint of the some $7 to $8 million that you get from the various television operations, as to whether or not the distribution of that money is really proper. You siphon off roughly $6 million for the cities and the county, and then whatever's left over you relegate to this operation. June is going to become very interesting because we intend to go on the air. As a matter of fact, the Taxpayers League will be going on the air with a program. We can't make up our mind whether we want to go on 71, 72 as an educational program with the mandatory requirement that all elected officials attend our classes, or go to 73 and 74 as advocates to tell you how badly you handle it.
Joe, 17 and 18 will be in effect then.
Oh, 17 and 18, that's even better. We'll get better.
Push that.
You might want to try the religious.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Dave.
You might want to try the religious channel, too.
Okay, go ahead. 17 and 18 where it'll be.
But in any event, this came up very high on our radar screen, and we're playing catch-up. Really, we were kind of blindsided by this, but the 30 meg operation really disturbs us. One of the things that we're really going to look for is to make sure that if it's humanly possible, that thing is actually a competitive operation and involving the major telephone distributors within the area, because it obviously can keep costs down over something that you build yourself. As a former manager of engineering of a telephone company, I can tell you it's nothing to play with. I had the similar situation in '62. At the time, I was the manager of the engineers in the Gulf Coast Telephone Company that handled sales and also contracts. And one morning, the president of the company came down and said, "Joe, move your desk up to the corner office. You're now the chief engineer." And we were right in the middle of building a telephone company. So I can tell you that it's a very tricky operation. So consequently, I assure you the league is going to be watching this very carefully. And when we do our homework, we do it very, very well. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Ditto to what you said, and you do your homework. Janice Kelly. Welcome, Janice.
Good afternoon. I'm Janice Kelly, and I'm a community member, and I have made a living for many years by telling the stories of people and places and events in this community and elsewhere. The people that make a difference in others' lives, I give them a voice. I've interviewed several of you on this commission at various times for different magazine stories. And this is really how we build community. This is how it works together, how we strengthen the bonds with people in our own neighborhoods and our own community. And this is what I believe Access Sacramento does. It gives a very critical voice to the community. It links us. It makes a difference. And I believe by weakening Access Sacramento, we really weaken the ability to strengthen our bonds and our community. And I just wanted to let you know that I support them.
Thanks very much. Jen Storm. From Jan.
Hello, Jan.
Jan Storr, Executive Director of the Nonprofit Resource Center. I had the opportunity to hear Steve Peace and Liz Hill talk on Tuesday, and I know what you're facing when it's on top of what we read in the newspapers and you hear it straight from those doing the analysis. And what's very clear that of all the money, whatever it is, 29 billion or 35 billion, even when our economy comes back, what they have said, 15 to 18 billion will never come back because of all the phony paperwork among many of the corporations. So I know we're dealing with very tough times, but I'm very familiar with nonprofits, having worked with them for years, and I know what Access has done with nonprofits and the benefit. And I feel quite upset about the deal that has been arranged here. I don't know quite how it all came about because I'm not an inner player on this, but I know that the small amount that is taken away from a small nonprofit organization like Access, once that's gone, it will never come back if you let it go, and that organization will be eviscerated. And that's what I think is happening here. It looks as though some money's being taken, of course, to go to the general fund. The small amount that is compared to what it means big for a small nonprofit has a tremendous impact in this community. And I think that this has been done, and I have to agree with Bill Bronston on this. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I'll agree on this, that this has all been done without ever having a community needs assessment around all the money over the years that's being spent. And I'll bet if you had a community needs assessment and you compared whether you were going to put that money into the general fund or you were going to put it into educational channels, of course I consider Access Sacramento educational in every respect, and I think you heard that from the parade of speakers we've heard over the last two sessions. Or you had a needs assessment on the benefits that come out of Access, I think it would come out a little bit differently than the way this money is being divided up. And I think there's been a mistake made here, and it's very disturbing for those of us who have seen the benefits that have accrued to I'm only speaking for nonprofits here because that's the main thing I know, the benefits that have been accrued over the years. So I think the shift is really deplorable.
Thank you, Jen. Linda Copeland.
Hello, I'm Dr. Linda Copeland. I care for patients and families in Sacramento, and I want to echo what Dr. Bill Bronston said and the last speaker, that we really need a community needs assessment so that rather than just opinion on where we shift resources, we really get a sense of what the community needs. I am in favor of strengthening access. It is a form of homeland security. The stronger and more knit together we are as a community, having a voice is really a part of our security. So I would urge you to do the needs assessment. We need to know the subscriber number. That data should be had. That's important in making these kind of decisions. And again, I'd urge you to look at the programming, beneficial programming like Parent Haven that can help prevent problems with child abuse and behavioral and learning problems in young children by giving parents information about resources in their own communities, about the nonprofits out there to help. It really is about building community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Joanne Engel. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Joanne Engel, a community producer for 14 years at Access. Recently I had leukemia and the doctors told me I was going to die. I didn't. And then my blood count's like half of yours, and I'm just thankful I'm alive. I heard about this compromise and I said, geez, I'm thankful we're not dead. But when I hear what's going on, I said, geez, I'm being compliant because I'm not happy that you've cut us this way. At first I thought, yay, we're not dead. But I look at this money and I'm thinking, here's your baby. Metro, $283,000. Sacramento, Access, $420,000. A difference of $145,000. Ladies and gentlemen, Access can do your job better. I've been a producer for 14 years. I have my own business, and I'm saying that if you're open to it, I'd be glad to meet with your people and save you a lot of money. I've only had this channel of Comcast for the last 3 months. I've watched your channel, and this money, that's too high. You're paying too much. And as far as cost analysis, I think you need to do that. If Richard, are you in this budget for Metro? Is that your salary too? No, so you are really paying too much. And most of the people that are working on your Metro programming, guess where they came from? Access. In fact, they got their credentials from working on my shows, the educational shows that I produce. And I've got resolutions from both the last 2 district attorneys, from Governor Wilson, and many other wards saying that just one show I produce, Ask a Lawyer, has saved us in this community a lot of money because it educates people about what it costs to be doing things illegal and what it costs to go to court. And it has stopped a lot of teenagers and a lot of people from committing crimes when they find that out. So I'm just suggesting that you need to rethink taking away all this money when for $145,000 we're doing 5 times as much as Metro's doing. I'm serious. This has not been evaluated, and I'm compliant that I only have half the blood to live my life, but I'm not compliant that you're going to take all of our airtime away on especially 73, and I'm not compliant that you're taking this much money. Thank you.
Joanne. can't,
Arnie?
Is it Arnie?
He knows who he is.
It's okay, no,
But you'll give it right.
Arnie, it's your handwriting. We go through this every meeting. It's S-A-N, you're gonna have to put on the record the last name, please, because I can't read your hand.
S-A-M-P-E.
Okay?
Sam.
I'm retired.
We'll print next time, okay? Thank you.
My speech correction teacher told me how to do that, too.
Cursive or printing?
Print in,
Okay.
Phonetics.
Thank you. We'll start
Well, I
the clock.
brought
We're
my
gonna
banner.
start the clock over, so we get a,
I brought
okay,
my
go ahead.
banner, which we put on the television shows.
Right.
Now, my staff is mostly retired Toastmasters, and we plan on being retired for a very long time.
We talked about that last time, about the
Yes, we did.
Jimmy E. and I, the senior citizens, yes, okay.
Yes, we're very retired, but we're going to be retired for a very long time. So, of course, we go everywhere. And we like the program because we think it brings in minorities, it brings in women. We even have the tall women on our program. We go out to the sheriff stations, we go to the churches, we go. We believe, we really believe. I believe that's what Judas said, we believe. We believe that better communication builds better communities, and we want to be part of a better community.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arnie.
Well, actually, thank you for letting me do it twice.
Our pleasure.
You got a long memory.
I'm a poor reader, though, your handwriting. Thank you. Danya Weeken? Weiken? Okay, Weeken.
All women. The tall women.
I'm in the short one.
Welcome, Danya.
Thank you. I realize that people have spent a lot of time working out this compromise, and I don't wish to seem ungrateful, but I really hate it. I had a film in the Festival of Cinema that was sponsored by Public Access. My film was seen on the big screen at the Crest Theater. Until I entered the Public Access Film Festival contest, I never had any interest in movie making, and I never thought it was a possibility for somebody like me. I was caught in a corporate downsizing a few years ago. Since then, I've either been unemployed or working at crappy jobs. I have very little income, certainly not the kind of financial resources you need to become a filmmaker. And yet, once my script was selected by Public Access, they taught me how to use Final Draft software in order to make a properly formatted script. They paired me up with a professional video maker, and I learned about cameras, I learned about actors, I learned about shooting schedules, shooting scripts. I learned about shooting all of the scenes on this side of the room first so that you don't have to set up the camera again when you shoot the next scene. I learned things that I did not learn from watching TV. And my point is that when you're comparing Public Access with other forms of television, you're just comparing two completely different species. Because Public Access isn't really about what you're watching on the screen. Basically, television is about making money, and the product being sold is the audience. And if you follow the money, you realize that the people paying and the people making the profits are paying for audiences to watch commercial advertising. Historically, we've been able to count on public broadcasting to provide an alternative to that, but they've become more and more reliant on sponsors, and their broadcasting has become more and more bland and less thought-provoking. Basically, Public Access is the only medium, the only form of the medium that doesn't attempt to create passive, receptive, non-critical audiences for commercial advertisers to sell products to. Public broadcasting is teaching us how to be a part of the medium and how to create the programming that we want to see. I think that is so essential, and I think that depriving it of even 1 cent is a terrible, terrible mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker that signed up, Jeannie Keltner. Welcome, Jeannie.
Hi.
Go
I'd
ahead.
also like, of course, to speak against the severe cut to access. I lived in Paris for 3 years during the 80s, and it was while they had a socialist government, François Mitterrand. And it wasn't very socialist. It was really just like here, except that they took better care of their communities. And they had a principle in Paris that they gave a little scholarship to any group that got together to do anything at a communal level that would help pay for your postage, and you could get free meeting places. Well, I learned there about what community is and how much it makes a place alive and safe and prosperous and fun for the people in it. And I think that all the speakers that I've heard just here have said such deep things about being active and being in contact and being creative and being social-minded and thinking of communication and how to reach an audience, that we have, as rough as it seems around the edges, cable access is alive and communal and a place in our community that creates a positive social energy. It creates people who are, as the previous speaker said, critical viewers of television, which we have to be. It creates another a field of information. And I know I was talking with somebody at a peace vigil last Tuesday, and he said, you know, considering that Germany and France followed the majority of their population and came out against the war, they're more democratic than we are. And I said, wow, that just shows you how, you know, people know a lot about this war. And he said, well, I learned it watching your show. So, I mean, not that that probably makes you want to cut us more, possibly, but but information about what's going on that has no profit motive, that is just people wanting to get their message out, is something worth sponsoring in this world. Because the world is, not that I undercut it all when I look at Isla and I know what she's facing in cuts. You know, I know that this is like the cream in certain ways, but it's a necessary element. And so I just want to be another voice pleading for access, for community needs assessment, and for recognition of the intangible things that this small amount of money, you know, produces.
Thank you. Okay. That ends the public testimony. Commissioners have any comments? Start down at this end. Mr. Jones?
Oh.
I'm sorry. Roger, didn't
Just a quick
see you
one.
put your hand up. Go
I
ahead.
think if we can pursue the needs assessment idea, I think it's worthy. I don't know that people would want to take money that's increasingly precious to do that or not, but I've always been a supporter of doing community needs assessments from time to time. I think it's a good way to get a barometer. Beyond that, I would just ask that when we get to the point, I know there's actually been a motion and a second earlier, Mr. Chairman, when we get to the point of
taking action, if we could take KVIE out separately as we have done in the past.
We can do that, no problem.
I would appreciate that. Mr. Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, what we have before us is to go forward with a 3-year plan for funding. It would seem to me that it might be prudent, again, we're not going to decide it today, but this community needs assessment has been brought up time and time again. And maybe we ought to have some further discussion before we get, in 3 years we'll go very quickly. I think it might be appropriate if we get to that point in time to have done some additional assessment around programming and where we're at that point in time. So again, it's not going to address the immediate situation here. We have a proposal before us, but I would second what Mr. Dickinson said. I think that there's probably some benefit to doing that. We've done some of that work in the past, but again, we could probably spend a few meetings just talking about how we're going to put that process together. But it would seem to me that before we get to 3 years out and we're back into it, whoever sits in these seats dealing with community programming and funding for it and so forth, that we might be well served to look at, you know, structuring some sort of needs assessment process to, you know, reach out to the community.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones.
A question. The staff report that you provided us at the last meeting or the meeting before that indicated about an 8% decline in revenue, some portion of which will be met by the cuts that are being proposed to the grantees. But at this level of cuts, it looks to me like we don't totally make up the balance of the decline in revenues. So what happens to the rest of the budget? I mean, this compromise obviously tells us what happens vis-a-vis the grantees, but what happens to the rest of the budget to make up the rest of the decline in the revenues?
Based on the projections we had from last meeting and recognizing that we'll have revised projections updated with the last quarter's revenue payments for you at the budget in June, your decisions so far take you from in round numbers, from 6.1 million distribution to the parental entities to 5.75 distribution to the parental entities.
Okay, so there is a cut. So the implication of these cuts to the grantees is that there will also need to be cuts to the parental entities as well to make up the balance of the projected revenue loss.
That's correct.
And you had also, I thought, indicated in one of the prior reports that we also might reduce the admin budget for the commission as a component of this too. Where does that, I mean, is that
that number I just gave you factors that
factors in a reduction? And were you looking at about a 25% reduction in admin?
That's correct.
Which is the same figure we're talking about for the grantees overall too, I take it.
Overall, approximately, yes.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll speak to the motion then. No one is happy about having to make cuts, but right now the information available to us is that we have an 8% decline in revenues. We've given direction to our staff that we need to perform an audit. A number of us have expressed an interest in looking, obviously, not only at the results of the audit, but also what information it is we're collecting during the audit, and I think we do need to have that come back because there may be some things we want to do to ensure we're collecting the right information and we get complete information. But you know, the simple conundrum with which we're faced is that we have declining revenues, and it's not only happening here, but it's also happening in the parental entities. And as the members of the Board of Supervisors know far more better and acutely than I, they have about a $79 million gap in their budget right now, if I'm somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's going to occasion cuts to many of the same constituencies that Access cares about. Poor communities, communities which are poor and disproportionately minority, communities that rely on health clinics, social services, prevention, intervention, and treatment programs, a whole host of communities that are going to feel the pain of this, including a lot of nonprofits who we have historically relied upon to deliver a lot of these services are going to be cut as well. So it's not a pretty picture, and it's not a great position for any of us to be in. But for me personally, I felt the first staff recommendation regarding 75% cut to Access was just unfair. And I appreciate all the work that's been done since then to try to reach a compromise, and I appreciate all the really good efforts of the Access board members and the leaders of the Access board and Smctc and KVIE and the others to reach this compromise, which ensures that we more equitably spread the pain of these cuts to make sure that one organization doesn't have to bear all of the cuts, as was basically being proposed last time. And I would include in that Metro 14, because it's my understanding that Metro 14 gets cut under this, and as you've just explained, the parental entities are going to face cuts, as is the admin budget for the Cable Commission when we finally adopt the budget. So it's not a great place to be. No one's really ecstatic about it, but you know, at the end of the day, I think the compromise probably represents the best case for what we can do to try to hack our way out of this particular thicket. So I'm going to support the motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr. Nadeau.
First of all, with regard to the needs assessment, I had made a comment about that at our last meeting, and the idea certainly has merit. Well, it can't be argued with.
If you suggested it, no, it can't be disputed.
Of course. Thank you very much for validating me, Mr. Waters. But as with all things that we deal with at all times, but especially now, there's this just sort of nagging little problem of money. To do a needs assessment appropriately is going to cost probably tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more than that. So I'm not prepared to discuss actual approval of that today. I see people shaking their heads, and people can agree or disagree, but I've done surveys, and you can get a survey done for $5,000 or $10,000, but as they say, you do get what you pay for, and this would have to be accurate. With regard to the a couple of comments that were made. With regard to shifting funds from community programming or any of this to the, and it was characterized, general fund, as if there's something sinister about the general fund. And I don't mean to be overly sarcastic, but I think it's really important to point out what this general fund is. Insofar as the county is concerned, the general fund is cops on the streets. The general fund is drug prevention. The general fund is protecting children from abuse. The general fund is protecting senior citizens from abuse. The general fund is serving meals to homebound seniors. I could go on, but this notion of somehow cavalierly transferring money from these activities to some kind of faceless thing out there, I think needs to be put in the proper perspective. What we've experienced here relative to this particular question, I would invite all of you, by the way, to attend our budget workshops in June and our budget hearings, in May, and our budget hearings in June. What we've experienced here in this commission is a snippet of what we're going to experience there. We will have people, advocates of children, advocates of senior citizens, advocates of those on indigent health care. We will have advocates of law enforcement in neighborhood streets talking to us about all sorts of funding issues. And I apologize for perhaps burdening all of us with maybe a lot more words than needed to be said about this. But this budget process that we're about to go through is going to be, I'm anticipating, probably the most unpleasant thing that I've ever been through. Not looking forward to it. But we're going to get through it, and we're going to have to. And frankly, we need to find every discretionary source of cash we can to minimize the kinds of cuts that we have to make. Some cuts are going to be 100%. 100%. So, having said that, I support the motion, and I think that I want to compliment the community groups for getting together and working out a collaborative compromise on this. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'd like to, I will support it and would happily like to move on.
Thank you, Roger. Isla?
Okay, I just want to make a couple of comments because the first comment I want to make is I don't know how you would define a needs assessment. I'm going to assume that our budget hearings are going to be a needs assessment that are far beyond any needs assessment that would have to do with cable television programming. And we've mentioned before, we have to cut $70 to $80 million out of essentially a $100 million general fund that's not mandated. That's a world of pain and a world of hurt for the elderly, for children, for the mentally ill, for people who depend on our clinics. We're going to be making tremendous, drastic cuts So the concern that you're hearing from county supervisors up here is absolutely genuine concern. I echo what Roger said. I've been on the Board of Supervisors for a very long time. I've had to make a lot of cuts in budgets before, but never have we experienced a budget like we're going to have this time. And I think it's important that you understand that I'm coming from the standpoint of one who believes that the franchise fees coming from people who cut up our rights of way really start off as a fee to do business. No matter how they might put it on their bill, they are using right-of-ways that belong to the public. They can come and, in the case of my home, and I'm sure in yours too, if you're undergrounded, they can cut up your front lawn because part of it is behind the sidewalk in the public right-of-way. There are all sorts of things that they are using in the public right-of-way for which they reimburse, and that reimbursement goes through the Cable Commission. But it's legitimate for those monies, those general fund monies, to come back to parent entities. But it's also imperative for this commission to make sure that all of those public channels are programmed, that there's programming on them, which is why I think the commission has always been very generous in funding the grantees, as well as funding Metro Cable 14 and trying to keep it on the air. We want to keep all of those channels as public access channels in terms of PEG channels, and we want to make sure they're programmed. But if I have to make a choice on where I essentially consider general fund monies going for the public right-of-way issues, then I know that in this kind of a budget year where my priorities are going to be, I'm going to vote for this motion, even though I didn't start out agreeing with the type of motion that was made last time, because I've got some reservations about what we're going to be facing in our own budget.
Jimmy?
Thank you, Robbie. I've heard a lot of testimony. I think one thing that we have to understand is that when there's money available, we're certainly more than happy to distribute it to all the areas that we think it benefits the public. Certainly, public television is one of those things. But we're in a state of economy that we have to take a hard look at it. I recognize where the state is. I recognize where the county is. In fact, just yesterday, I had a meeting with our own city manager, and Bill Edgar's probably happy he's not there, but nevertheless, you know, we're talking about $15 million a year for the next 3 years that we have to cut from our budget. And it affects everything. Our general fund takes care of public safety. You're talking about police and fire, the libraries, the parks, hey, you name it. That's what our general fund is all about. And part of this money is our general fund. And as much as I hate to do it, we're faced with a $50 million budget cut. And so we have to cut probably across the board somewhere. And this is one area that I have to support the proposal, the motion, and see where we go from there. As much as we all hate to give up money, we at the city are going to have to decide where to cut our budgets. And so it's one of those share the pain a little bit. So, Mr. Chair, I certainly intend to support the motion.
I think I made my comments.
Sorry.
That's okay, Rob. I made my comments last meeting. I'm against the cuts, but I also, in hindsight, I know the pain, especially the county is feeling. And in fact, as Roger said, next June it could get very ugly. In fact, I'm recommending that all cities in South County put their money in plastic jugs and bury it somewhere so it can't be found, because there isn't going to be enough money to go around for everybody. But I'm not 100% happy with what we've come up with, but everybody's worked together, and I think that that was a good process, and I am happy with that, and I am going to support the motion.
James?
Well, I can say I certainly feel the pain. I was hoping that the community made a compromise that we didn't have to do. I know how tough it is out there. At least you have a body that at least soften the blow. I have bodies that don't soften blows. We're funding welfare to work out of our general fund because we know there's a need in the community. And so the 25%, I know it's tough, but it has forced us to go look for alternative funding sources and what we found is less rigorous, less restrictive, and we still can get our job done. So it forced me to sharpen my pencil and start thinking about alternative ways, and I'm sure there's other ways out there to make up to 25%. But we do need assessment, not only here, but I think in every agency in this community, because times have changed, and there's a new sense of need out there that I think I'm in the community. I see young kids today that are out there that I see the city erupting, but we don't have the money to put on the pain. And so sometimes I don't even think we know where the problems are. So we listened to you. We've done the best that we could do. The county is suffering some tough issues in terms of budgets. We were fortunate in Citrus Heights. We finished a year last year with a budget surplus. I know we won't do that this year, even after giving the county $2 million. So we're sharpening our pencils. We found alternative ways to do things, and we're making it work.
Mike?
I went ahead and made the motion. I'll just go ahead and amend it to initially exclude KVIE on the initial motion.
Roger, did you hear that?
I think the preference would be to do KVIE first, and then to be able, I think the preference is to do KVIE first, and then after that one is done, then you can do a motion on the entire resolution that Mr. Dickinson can participate
I'll move Ms. Steiner's recommendation.
James, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just one comment. I would like to see at least a biannual report back on the ED channels. There was a question about ACC, about who's watching. So I would like to get some at least biannual report backs in terms of the effects of the education channel on the new opportunities that they have.
So, Madam Chair, Clerk, I think that we want to bifurcate this, as Mike said, to take
do
this
two
out
votes.
of one at a time, if you will.
First one excluding.
First one, the motion will
Including
be that we,
KVIE.
yeah, KVIE first.
Okay.
Roll call.
Go ahead, roll call.
Jones?
Aye.
Pillsbury?
Yes.
Dickinson?
Abstain.
Peters McEwen?
Aye. Collin?
Yes.
Yee?
Aye.
Nevo?
Yes.
Leary?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes.
Natoli?
Aye.
Waters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Second part, please.
Jones?
Aye.
Pillsbury?
Yes.
Dickinson?
Aye.
Peters McEwen?
Aye.
Collin?
Yes.
Yee?
Aye.
Nevo?
Yes.
Leary?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes.
Natoli?
Aye.
Waters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Carries. Okay. Item number 2, please, Madam Clerk.
We have noticed public hearing, cable TV license application for Sacramento County Strategic Technologies.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for council. And it was raised actually by your reference to your representation, but is it your opinion that the statute regarding campaign contributions would apply in this instance had they been received from Lennar?
It's my understanding that STI is a wholly owned subsidiary of Lennar. That is the same reason why my office represents Lennar and why I have not participated in the licensing request for STI. I am not aware that they, aside from being wholly owned subsidiary, I do not believe that they have jointly managed their businesses.
But they don't.
They don't.
So your opinion would be that the statute would not apply unless a contribution had been received from Strategic Holdings?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And if I could clarify that, in other words, a contribution received from Lennar would not compromise one from a participation on...
That's my understanding, because I do not believe that Lennar has any co-management with STI, that they operate independently other than the corporate ownership.
Okay.
If they're here, you might want to ask them before we get started. That was my understanding the last time I looked at it.
All right. Are they here? They are here. Here they are.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to introduce John White. John's the general manager for Strategic Holdings, operating as Strategic Technologies in Sacramento. John, welcome. What the question here is, I believe, and maybe Harry can frame it, is the relative to the campaign reporting requirements of the board members and the relationship of STI or SHI to Lennar, and understanding how that management works, how independent you are.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissions, Director. My name is John White, General Manager of Strategic Holdings and Strategic Technologies. Yes, we are a wholly owned subsidiary. We operate independently of Lennar Family of Home Builders, so we are in compliance.
Okay. Can Harriet ask the question?
The question with respect to the campaign contributions is whether or not Lennar directs any operations, or it has any influence with respect to the operations of Strategic Technology.
Okay, can you answer that question?
The answer to that is no. We operate independently of Lennar.
The one discomfort I have with that is that they could. I mean, operationally, I think what you're saying is, from a practical standpoint, operationally, they do not. They allow you to operate autonomously, but they could direct your actions if they so chose. Is that a correct statement?
If they so chose, but to my knowledge, we have not made any contributions. They have
I
not
recognize
on our behalf.
that. And this isn't interrogation. I'm just trying to clarify. I'm becoming less comfortable with the authority of a non-conflict.
Yeah.
You're the attorney, though, I realize.
Right. I mean, the issue with respect to the campaign contributions has to do with whether or not the campaign contribution that is from an entity or comes from an intermediary that will influence the decision before you, right? And so, I mean, thinking about it, I agree with you. I suppose at some point, being that they're a wholly owned subsidiary, Lennar could decide through its corporate ownership to take control of this company.
But
they do not
with that
do
being
that.
A prospective event, then it doesn't affect today's decision, is what you're saying.
That's right.
I see. Okay.
I mean, and it's sort of the same reason why I have not participated in the licensing issues, because we represent the parent corporation. I don't believe I have a political reform act conflict, but just from an ethics standpoint, for a legal ethics standpoint, I just decided it was easier to sit out than to worry about it.
Thank you. Thank you, John. All right, Rich?
Mr. Chairman, members, if I may, thank you. I believe Mr. Edgar's work is done here, so at least for the time being, so good job, Mr. Edgar. Thank you.
So you can exhale, Bill.
Yeah. Just wanted to acknowledge publicly that Bill's worked very hard in this, and he can go retire again maybe if we let him. So we appreciate his efforts.
Got work to do with the tax season.
And just to begin this item, I didn't get time last time just to say two things. I wanted to introduce Kelly Angus, new on our staff, who's pitching in and be here for a while Adri is home with her new baby. Forgot to say that last time.
Welcome, Kelly.
All right. This item is a request by Strategic Technologies for a second license within the area of your jurisdiction. As you may recall, Strategic Technologies Incorporated, STI, also SHI, they use both names, has a license from you about 5 years old in the Natomas area Their business model is quite interesting. They are, as mentioned, a wholly owned subsidiary of Lennar, and they provide both cable television and data services to those jurisdictions. They have before you a license application for a new subdivision, a subdivision not yet built, which has an impact on the license application analysis given the ordinance amendments you made last June. We have no data to analyze. There are no homes there, so there are no socio-demographic or economic or other issues to analyze, so I'd like to put that on the record. Secondly, under your ordinance, and as you may recall, going back to 1989, your policy has been to encourage competition in the marketplace, and you established an ordinance that says several things. If an applicant has completed the 4 or 5 documents or steps in the license application, and if the applicant already has a license, they must otherwise be in compliance with your ordinance, then you have agreed by ordinance that you will issue a license. In the staff report, I'm advising you that to the daily operational activities, STI and their project, their license in Natomas is in compliance with your ordinance. There was an issue, and it's addressed in the staff report, that up until now, STI had not addressed their obligation under the 30 megahertz language of your ordinance. And there is a statement that is now part of the application and in the record wherein STI has agreed for their service area to provide fiber optic infrastructure to the Natomas School District. That was developed with the SCCC and the school representatives at Natomas. Third, there is pending, and we have an agreement from them that they will be soon carrying all the PEG channels, and this involves some negotiations and discussions from STI and Comcast to acquire the signals. So with those documents that are in the staff report before you, I believe that STI has met the license requirements. I would encourage you, if you have questions, to direct them to me or to bring John back up so we can talk a bit about their business. So you've got 4 cable companies working within your jurisdiction. Comcast, of course, SureWest, STI, and then Cable America in the Rancho Cordova area. We talked mostly about the first 2, but you didn't know you had a couple of others.
Quick question.
Yes, John.
Rich, you mentioned the 30 megahertz as it relates to a current service area. What obligation comes with the area that they wish to serve, which doesn't yet have any houses, no schools, no parks, but will have schools, so what happens there?
The commitment from STI is to provide the same type of services to schools and school districts which will be located in their new area. So they've agreed to provide a pair of fiber from the school to the district headquarters if the district headquarters was within the service area in the new location.
And being that you have competing providers in those given areas, how is that then obligation either shared or divided?
Relative to the 30 megahertz proposal, yes. With the cooperation and the negotiation with the other providers in this, we've tried to minimize, if not eliminate, overlap from being in good business sense. There are a couple of cases, and we'll explain in later agenda items in today's packet, how and why we've addressed that. But bottom line, we've tried to eliminate duplicate 30 megahertz delivery.
Yeah, because Comcast will likely be wiring the same neighborhood in Sunridge and likely SureWest at some juncture would, in those new developing areas, maybe even Cable America. You might have all 4.
That's correct.
In a given area.
Well, there isn't an overlap for all 4. Relative to individual subscribers and homes,
yes,
all 3 would be authorized, and in the case of Natomas, there are homes that have a choice of 3 cable providers. My prior comments had to do with the 30 megahertz obligation and our desires not to duplicate or
right, I recognize
unnecessarily.
Okay.
But there can be 3 providers to a particular home and potentially 3 green weenies on the front lawn.
Any other questions? Need a resolution, adopt a resolution? Yes.
Well, do you have anybody sign up to speak?
Had a speaker.
No, not on this side.
Yes, Liz Rhodes.
Pardon me?
Liz Rhodes.
I thought she was an item.
Item, she's on
Sorry.
several items.
Okay, I'm sorry. But she signed up, that's why I'm confused. Come on up, Liz. 2, 3, and 4. I only looked at 4.
Before Liz speaks, though, can I ask a question of
Certainly.
the executive director? I appreciate STI or SHI?
STI.
STI?
I believe the license entity is SHI, Strategic Holdings, but if I've got it right, their DBA is Strategic Technologies.
All right.
I have that correct?
That's what
Maybe
confused me.
John could come to the podium and
John,
explain that.
can you clarify that, John? Because it's on our
Actually, I'm on
agenda
the
as
card.
STI, huh?
On the card to speak, so I'll just stay up if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we're
get the card.
SHI, doing business as STI.
Okay, great.
And you signed up to speak also?
Yes.
While you're there, go ahead, if that's
It's not
okay.
the end of my
Liz.
question,
Oh,
though.
I'm sorry. Let's
Sorry.
get this.
The rest of my question is, I see the resolution, I see the side letters conveying what you just described with regard to how they would meet the 30 megahertz obligation, but I don't understand completely how those obligations, or where those obligations are incorporated within the resolution or the license.
We had a reference that incorporated the staff report, or we intended to incorporate the staff report as part of as an attachment to the resolution, which would then incorporate the agreements by SHI or STI as commitments to the 30 megahertz and the PEG carriage. Let me check the wording.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Rich, that's what we discussed this morning, but theirs doesn't have it. The administrative change I made, but I forgot to print it and bring it.
Okay. If we could then, in considering it then, would be to agree that we would add language to the resolution which incorporates the staff report.
Well,
to the
It's
resolution,
already in there.
which would include then the attachment.
yeah, it's the staff report, but it's also these letters, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's the letters that provide the specific terms under which SHI is offering to meet the 30 megahertz.
Page 4 of our
Obligation.
staff report lists all of those on the end. And that was a reference I had forgotten in the resolution, but I changed it this morning, just didn't bring copies.
I'm sorry, say again, page
Of our
4.
staff report,
Yeah,
at the end under attachments, the resolution Exhibit A,
right.
all of their letters are listed there. What I have to add is the staff report.
Well, they're listed there, but they're not incorporated by reference in the resolution. And it's not clear to me that just incorporating the staff report by reference in the resolution solves our little procedural problem also. So, I just want to make sure we have an enforceable license. Not that anybody's not going to do what they're promising to do, but it did take us 25 years to
We will add,
hold the first group accountable.
if in your motion to approve.
And that's not in any way directed at any of the current licensees or franchisees, but only their predecessors in interest, several generations removed.
I would be appreciative, and thank you for catching that, Mr. Jones. If the board would entertain that the approval motion for the resolution includes an addendum that would incorporate specifically the commitment letters by STI of the dates that are referenced in the staff report, would that suffice?
It might, but, I mean, we don't have a counsel here to also tell us if that suffices, so I'm probably being overly concerned, but I would feel more comfortable if we had an attorney here telling us that suggestion of yours will suffice, but we don't, so.
Didn't you pass the bar?
Pardon?
I was going to say, I thought you passed the bar.
I did, but I'm not here functioning as this commission's attorney, so.
No, I understand. I believe we can incorporate and commit through your license appropriately and cover your concerns. And while I'm not an attorney, I think we've done this enough. We had discussed it this morning. It didn't get into the draft before you because there were a few other things going on. But I'm comfortable that we can make the appropriate references in your resolution.
Isla?
Yeah, Dave, would you feel more comfortable if we continued this and you got the advice of an attorney? We could contract for an attorney on one issue.
I mean, I don't want to
couldn't we?
hold these guys up, but by the same token, it's, I just want to make sure we do this right.
Could we ask Mr. White to put on the record the commitment and maybe read into the record his documents? And would that then suffice as a basis upon which you make your determination?
Yeah, I don't know.
We just didn't get an attorney.
I don't know if that suffices.
Well, does a 30-day continuous on this item create a problem that we could
Right. As
do
a
it,
point of
Mr.
fact,
Jones?
Mr. Chairman, if you look at the date, STI had actually made this application in time for the prior meeting, but given your scheduled long hearing, he respectfully, we moved it to this month, but they've actually had it pending now for about 45 days. I would recommend we read into the record the 30 megahertz obligation, and that you base your approval, your determination and approval of their license on that. And
Well, I think if we get a statement of what the 30 megahertz commitment is, and we approve a resolution as amended to incorporate that statement of commitment, the wordsmithing could be done later, as long as the vote includes it as an amendment to the resolution. I think that would be enforceable.
Include the letters
And
themselves.
and the letters, yeah.
Include the letters
Yeah, I mean,
themselves. Okay, let me ask another question, which goes to the content of the letters. Is there any timeline contemplated here for the implementation of this commitment?
yes, I believe it's specified in the letter, right, John?
Yes, on the 30 megahertz obligation, currently we have fiber in front of one of the schools that are active. We've designed in our infrastructure 2 other schools that are currently in some phases of construction design, where we stubbed up to those schools to provide, this service. And we have designed in the dark fibers to support our one fiber return, one fiber forward. So the infrastructure is physically there for, I'd say, 30% of that already.
Okay, but again, I don't see in the letter a specific time commitment for the implementation of this commitment.
Right now, it's all based on them building the schools. As soon as the schools are up, we're providing the fibers to them. We're coordinating with the Thomas School Board to activate as they need it. So that, right now, everything is based on the construction of the schools.
Right, but this doesn't even say that. I'm not disputing what you're saying. I'm not disputing the sincerity and commitment. I'm just saying the things you're saying are not in the document that we're going to adopt. So I'll wait to hear from our staff what they want to do about that.
Well, may I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Does the March 28th letter, Rich, as far as you're concerned, adequately describe a sufficient commitment with respect to the 30 megahertz obligation?
Yes, it does. I believe it does.
Okay.
And I think you'll hear that same from the
So
consortium.
if we want to add, and when we get to the point of a motion, that we are amending the resolution to include, you already have said, Exhibit A, which shall also include the staff report and shall specifically include the 30 megahertz obligation as set forth in the March 28, 2003 letter from Strategic Technologies, or SHI, and that further this obligation shall be implemented and service provided to schools in the affected area upon request. Maybe that gets there.
And I believe in our reporting process, I'll just keep you updated, is the status of as schools are built and fibers are activated for their use. Right now, we do not use the dark fiber because it's allocated for things like this. So I can specifically take out and note the fibers and give you a map or some type of report identifying what's available now.
I think, and let's just clarify, thank you, Mr. Dickinson. John,
I want to stress I'm not the counsel for this commission
right,
either.
but for the purposes of this letter,
My malpractice carrier
is it fair to say that
required
the fiber would be into the school within 90 days of the school requesting? Or,
That's more than fair.
Yeah.
90 days is more than fair.
all right. Mr. Dickinson, with what you just read, and if Diane got it down, I just propose that we add within 90 days of request.
I think that's reasonable.
he
It's going
said
to take a
that's
little
40.
time to respond to the request, so
Actually,
within 90 days.
dropping down level what he was just saying and the work in this, they actually have their plant built before the school is there. So it's a coordination issue, not a contractual issue.
Right.
Just one question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Mr. White, a 30-day delay, does that cause any harm on your application?
At this time, when we set up these type of systems and projects, we put together pre-budgets, we pre-plan and submit documentation to our parent company for the upcoming fiscal year. So we are a little bit behind.
No reason not for him to hook it up if
we are kind of behind in submitting that based on this approval.
Someone arranged it.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with trying to do all these incorporations without legal, attorneys sitting here advising, and so I'd prefer to approve it at the next meeting, get all the details worked out, and bring it back in the proper legal format.
So your answer to Mr. Shelby was that it's a little bit, the way I heard it, a little bit of a problem, but it's not going to kill the deal. Is that correct? Am I
At this
mistaken?
point,
I know you don't like it, but
we've been good cable TV providers in the community. We work closely with your staff, and I can see where Rich is coming from. We've been very responsive to concerns or needs. We want to continue to be that way. And he's worked with us to put off our request for being on the agenda last month. Because you had issues you need to deal with, so we try to be sensitive to that. And
Mr. Chairman, there's a possible way to work through this, and I believe if Harriet were here, we would get this squared away fairly quickly. May I recommend that the board act as just described, and then how about directing me to secure approval as to form and language from the county council, and I'll bring your resolution in the meeting tape and clear it through the county council or one of the county council staff. In times past, once before, we've gone to county council for this type of problem.
so I guess what I'm hearing, Harry can't represent us, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
So what we need, maybe, if there's any possible, my suggestion, possible conflict in the future is that we have the county council here or whoever in the future, so we don't run into this again. Okay. So you don't see a problem if I heard you putting it over for 30 days till the next meeting?
I do.
You do?
Yes. I believe that we have, that the applicant has extended a courtesy to us
I understand
already,
that part.
given your ordinance. And I don't believe that the discussion we're having here is in the end material. I believe that we can craft that wording as far as when the schools will be done and correct the reference in the resolution or in the license fairly easily.
Any other comments?
Do we have a meeting in May?
We have a meeting scheduled in May.
It's not during cap to cap?
That's the problem I was going to ask at the end of this meeting, is how that impacts you.
Mr. Tone?
Robbie, Chairman, it would seem to me that we could sufficiently direct in a motion, I think, to cover the concerns that have been expressed here. I understand Mr. Shelby wanting to see it all back in the text, but it seemed to me for what we had before us that unless members don't have enough confidence in that we would word it correctly, but I think the intent is here. It's been spoken in a public record. It's been communicated in public communications between commission staff and the applicant here, the potential licensee. And so it would seem to me that we have, with a properly crafted motion, and have it reviewed by appropriate legal staff, that would be binding. I don't have any thoughts that it wouldn't be. And again, I guess if there was for some reason there was some error or glitch due back to us, we are still the license grantor. Yep. So I guess I would have comfort in going today if the motion were structured in a way that covered the concerns here. I don't mean to rush it, but it just seems to me that we can go forward. So.
I would be comfortable moving ahead today with the acknowledgments as we've discussed.
Is that a motion?
The motion.
Okay.
I'd make that a motion.
Second?
Second it.
Second. Let's have a roll call, please.
I'm sorry,
Are there
Mr.
other
Chairman, I
comments?
just want to make sure what we got here.
Yeah, we don't know we're motioning.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, Liz, I'm going to cut Liz out yet if I get a chance. Liz, why don't you
But
come?
were you move?
Speak, there's a member of the public.
Oh, they're not signed up.
No.
All I have is Liz.
That was my card.
That was his card.
We have one speaker
Are you
in Liz
done,
Rhodes.
John? At this point? No.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Just to understand, was the motion to approve the resolution with the amendment specifically referring to the commitment in the letter of March 28th?
The letter as well as acknowledgement in this public hearing.
And that service would be provided within 90 days of request by school? Okay.
Okay.
I can support the amendment. I just wanted, if it wasn't the 30 days didn't create any undue stress on the applicant, we could have waited. But if so, then I'm willing to compromise.
That's what I heard him say it would, yeah. Okay, Liz Rhodes, why don't you come up so I forget about you altogether here?
Good afternoon. I'm Liz Rhodes, Executive Director of the Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium. And I just wanted to put on the record that SECC has met with John with the STI or SHI, and in a very short period of time, in a very productive one meeting. STI was wonderful. They looked directly at what the needs of the schools were, met with Natomas, because this affects mainly Natomas and also Los Rios Community College District, which has a site at Natomas High School. It's wonderful to work with a company that sees the value of what we're doing, so there was no educational curve on this, and we really appreciated their support and their willingness to move forward. In fact, we're embarrassed to say that they were ready to move forward a year ago, and we were not at the plate in which to help them. So we're very much in support of their actions, and we're delighted to be partners with them and to move forward with this. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Jones?
Okay, I want to thank SHI or STI or whatever they call themselves, because I do appreciate their commitment to fulfilling this obligation. I think it's real. I think it's has been demonstrated by Liz. It's been demonstrated, and I'm sorry that they've gotten caught up a little bit in some concerns with regard to the drafting of the actual action that we're going to take, and maybe in some of the backwash from some of our prior experience with some folks who were not quite as diligent or committed. But I'm happy to support this motion. I do think, though, as the chair said, that in the future, if our counsel recuses himself or herself, it would be useful to have other counsel here, particularly on a licensing matter. And I'm confident that county council will watch the tape and understand fully what our intent is and make sure that this document is put in a form that captures the full intent, both as it relates to the 30 megahertz commitment as expressed in these accompanying letters, but also the provision of that, provision of that 90 days within request being made for specific schools.
Just one question. If there's any problem at all with county council, do you need this board to give you the ability to seek other counsel? Because you've got to have some independent counsel when you've got a conflict.
Based on, thank you, if that were to occur, I would come back to you, but I believe that over the next...
You wouldn't have time to come back.
You could do it within signature authority, couldn't you?
That's fine.
For this kind of... He'd have a signature.
Okay, so you could do your signature authority to go ahead and get the opinion from, or get it written up by another if there's any problem with county council. Okay.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Nilo, second by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Jones? Jones?
Aye.
Pillsbury?
Yes.
Dickinson?
Aye.
Peters McEwen?
Yes.
Collin?
Yes.
Yee?
Aye.
Nilo?
Yes.
Leary?
Yes.
Shelby?
Yes.
Natoli?
Aye.
Waters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I
I'm sorry.
have to excuse myself.
For the next...
I have an event to put some final touches on before I meet the 25% threshold.
Is it a love thing?
It's a love thing.
Okay, Mr. Shelby. Item 3.
We have Sure West licensee compliance action.
Chairman, members, I'll start off with an apology on this one. This is a document that has been worked on intensively for the last several weeks and didn't come to final form until this morning. Okay. So I'm going to take some time to walk you through the agreement before you. I'm going to ask members of the Ed Consortium, ask Liz and other members of the Ed Consortium to possibly help me along the way. What you have before you is a response to the license condition imposed on Sure West that was issued on June 4th last year. As you recall, Sure West became the acquirer of the WinFirst assets pending its bankruptcy. At the time of issuing their license, we didn't have the time to negotiate a compliance package relative to 30 megahertz. So a process was begun that culminated in this document before you. I think I'm not sure who all has signed up, but to frame this in the bigger perspective of the Ed Consortium's desire to move the 30 megahertz issue forward for Comcast, for Sure West, and for others, I'd ask that Liz Rhodes lay the foundation for this, and the involvement, the process, and the determination and feeling of the Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium on where we are with this document. And then we'll start through. I'll offer to you that it is both a semi-legal document relative to compliance with your license, as well as a very technical one. And I will do my best to describe some of the technical issues that have been at point of negotiation over the last several weeks. I believe, Liz, I think Liz was signed up to speak.
Yes, she is indeed.
Liz Rhodes, Executive Director, Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium. To give you the background, and I believe quite a bit of this is in that staff report that you have, and some history here. At Sure West's request, when this first came through, when they took over the assets of Win, SCCC did nothing until September. Give Sure West the time that it needed to understand its plan. In September, we began a series of meetings that was basically to educate from our perspective, Sure West, in terms of our 30 megahertz position paper, what our goals were and what our long-term plans for the educational community was in utilizing this network. There were assorted white papers, there were numerous meetings. I think it was very difficult in terms of what our expectations were and what our vision was for Sure West to kind of grasp the idea of where we were going, but we persevered. In addition to that, we encouraged Sure West mainly through the grant district and through CSUS to look at outside business applications outside of their 30 megahertz obligation. And the idea there being that we felt that there were some pretty significant business cases, and those meetings occurred. So we were trying to do quite a bit in several different meetings. In February of this year, as we were trying to bring this to a close, our, as Rich so fondly calls it, Pilot Implementation Group, or PIG, we had worked closely with Comcast on a lot of the pilot details, and we were coming very close to a set of expectations that we had, that we knew that, based upon also some of your recommendations, that we could bring forward, and some, bottom line for us. Included in those is we felt it was very, very important to have compatibility and interconnect with the Comcast network. If you remember a lengthy staff report you got from Rich in February, it talked about the difficulties in trying to identify where those locations were. There were some things that Sure West could do and some things that Comcast wouldn't. So there was, it was very critical to us that if this was going to work, and it goes to some of the questions you asked about STI, that we were able to marry all of these together and have a system that was workable for us. The other things that were real important, we wanted to have the district headquarters on the backbone of this GIGI network that they're proposing, and we wanted to have the schools connected and be able to route appropriately between schools and the headquarters. We needed the what we were calling the demarcation and handoff points. That's where I'm glad Rich said he's going to explain that to you, because it gets real techy. and I know enough to be totally dangerous, which so I'm not going there. But I do know that they met extensively with our folks at Grant District and at CSUS, and we had SCO, and we had all of our technical people together in numerous meetings to try and work this through, and there were lots and lots of conversations. The other big part that was important to us was trying to balance in all of this the obligations that the different cable companies had. We understand that, you know, it's a significant obligation. I think Mr. Jones has referred to this as very valuable real estate. It's very critical to us, very important to us. We wanted to come up with something that we thought that was fair and complementary, and that we realized each company was unique to itself, and we wanted to get the most out of that uniqueness and be able to balance that appropriately, and we think we've arrived at that with the work that we've done with Comcast and the work that has come out and what's in your documents with SureWest, so that there's a very fine balance there where there is very little duplication of efforts, which in the long run we feel is going to be very beneficial to this community. The other big thing is, you know, talk about money. Who pays for all of this? We've heard you loud and clear. We went through a huge process where we know there's going to be some extra money. What we're pleased to say today is what is before you on all of these is there's absolutely no cost obligation to anybody outside of the cable companies. And that has been, you know, I want to acknowledge Rich and all of his work and with that, and also all the cable companies that we've worked with in trying to bring this together. We think we're going down the right road. In March, just to finish up the timeline, and that's where things got real heated in the last couple of weeks, was trying to reduce all of these conversations and get everyone on, and I mean everybody, on the same page. And I think we are on that same page that you have in front of you today. Our bottom line is that within the last week, this has come together quickly, but it's been through a very lengthy process. And we think that when SureWest meets the obligations that are on that paper in front of you as an educational consortium, we are very, you know, we're confident, we're happy with the fact that we feel that they will have met their 30 megahertz obligation, and we think we've got, you know, the grounds for a pretty dynamic network in place. And I've got to tell you, we are very excited about working with SureWest. We think we've learned a lot through this process. We've learned a lot about relationships and how to work with each other, and we feel that that they have the same vision now that we do. And we're excited about moving forward with this and very excited about working with them.
Okay. Are there questions for Liz before I call on Mr. Dugan?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Liz. Just wanted to make sure that there have been direct communications with the folks at Grant and Natomas and Del Paso and Rio Linda as to the terms of this.
You bet. Matter of fact, Jim Chapman is here from Grant District representing Dr. Buchanan. Dr. Buchanan has been instrumental in pulling this together. Rio Linda has very specifically asked that they be included because they're right next door out in McClellan Park to the Grant District. And Del Paso Heights, we've met with them, and SureWest has talked with Del Paso Heights. And I believe.
And what about Natomas?
Natomas is the cross-connect, the interesting cross-connect between STI or SHI, and Natomas is okay with this, and that also, by the way, is going to include then the Los Rios Community College District because of that co-location there.
Okay, thanks.
And, I might mention, I had an email from Larry Buchanan yesterday saying he was comfortable with what had been arrived at. So.
We think it's a good deal. Thank you.
Okay, Robert Dugan.
Just say what you want to say, and I'll go next.
Good afternoon, Robert Dugan, SureWest Communications. Pleasure to be here. On behalf of SureWest Communications, I'm pleased to report that we're in support of the proposal before you. It's a consensus document after a long talk and a nice long walk, which actually took us less than a year, because it was less than a year ago that we acquired the assets of then a bankrupt company and started trying to figure out what we had purchased and how it was going to work and what the network infrastructure was going to look like. When we first entered this business last summer, as you know, because you received the report, the 30 megahertz iNet concept was a vision, a rough concept. That vision was in the education community pretty well entrenched, but the question of how that vision would become a reality was still yet to be defined. And I'm pleased to be here today to say that certainly from our proposal's perspective, we think we've now crossed that divide between vision and reality and come up with a proposal that helps make that vision a reality. And will ultimately build the network of the future today here in Sacramento. We're excited about the gigabit Ethernet solution. When we first threw that out on the table as a possible way to make the how work last fall, it was a new concept, and now it looks like it's going to be adopted as maybe the standard for future licensees, or at least interconnectivity to that whole gigabit Ethernet solution, which Rich can probably speak more to because I think he knows the technology better than I do, but it provides a bigger bandwidth and a bigger flexible answer for schools as they change what their needs may be in the future. We're also excited that the report has an element for a report back provision, so we can make sure that the dollars that we're expending to help create this network are actually used for the purposes for which we're all having this debate and this negotiation. So we're excited to be here. We're excited that this process has concluded. We support the proposal in front of you and appreciate the hard work of the Smctc and the Cable Commission staff in working to get to this point, and look forward to moving forward and getting this thing built. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Dugan?
I was just going to say that I appreciate the work that Sure West has done as well as Smctc. This was far less congenial not so long ago, and everybody has worked very hard to get back on track, so I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you have a question?
No, just a comment. I wanted to congratulate Sure West also. Working in a year's time from concept to consensus was in a pretty complicated atmosphere when we SEC and we didn't really have a good idea of what we wanted a year ago. I think is amazing, and I want to congratulate you on that. And
well, I think we all pushed each other to excel, which is what needs to happen when you're coming up with a concept that is yet undefined. Because now I think it's pretty well defined what could work, and it's going to be a really cool solution.
I think it says something, the Sure West organization, a strong local organization with a feeling of how important this community is to them, and congratulate you on that. I also like the idea of the report back. I think that's one of the things since I've been on the commission, that I continue to hear is this reporting back. How are we doing? What do people want? Testing us and that sort of thing. And I think that was a very good idea to put that in your document. So.
Thank you.
Dave?
Well, thanks also.
You bet.
Question for Rich.
Thanks.
In sort of non-techies, then, what we're getting is what precisely?
I was going to take a few minutes and walk you through.
Good.
That's okay.
We've got one more speaker. Do you want to do that first?
That's whatever is your preference.
Why don't we do that? Because we have someone from Comcast, Karen Monroe.
That's for item 4.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Let's frame this. The 30 megahertz agreement with Comcast from last summer set some broad parameters in place, but didn't get down to the technical levels. It just said these are the locations that are going to be wired. And we've moved through with Comcast. We moved well through in November, December, and January, where they began to articulate the specifics. And item 4 addresses in their status report what they are delivering on their side. The issues became for the Ed Consortium with the pilot implementation group, and yeah, okay, they're pigs, but it's fun. I mean, all the engineers are laughing, I hope. Of addressing, I think, 3 key concepts that I briefed you on in a written staff report in February, which was the overall architecture, the routing the physical routing that everything takes, and then what electronics is going to link all this together. The overall architecture by both companies, with a little bit of nudging, came to a common point. It's called a gigabit Ethernet. This is the equivalent of the type of technology that wires this building, that being an Ethernet. It's the equivalent of what really is the protocol, and I'm using that word somewhat loosely, that runs the internet. But this is on a massive basis. The original negotiations with Comcast were for a 622 megabit pipe. We're now at 1,000 megabit pipe. That's what a gigabit is. So to start, the initial capacity of what you've negotiated for is 40% bigger. And I'm going to tie back to Comcast here a little bit, because what we had to do here was bring these two separate companies, competing companies with two separate networks together, yet they weren't in the room together. So we were doing this back and forth and back and forth. The original proposal from Comcast, and then revised by the ed techs, was for a ring and star configuration for the Comcast piece. That piece goes from SCOE to the 4 districts, as you recall: San Juan, Folsom, Elk Grove, and Sac City, district headquarters. With that being in place, the questions then became, what are the districts and what are and how do we tie on the Sheer West side? Well, obviously Grant was an easy one to get on the chart, because Grant is located at McClellan Park, adjacent to the Sheer West head end. The others fell into place, so we knew which school districts were on our list. So the architecture soon became GIGI to the same districts. The next big question was how to route that, and how to interconnect them. And we spent a good 2 months over the holidays trying to figure out where these two massive networks would communicate. And there were several engineering options discussed, and the conclusion was the best place for a variety of factors, but one, the easiest accessible place where both networks overlapped was at CSU. So there was a breakthrough there in moving both companies to agree to bring their GIGI pipe to CSU for routing, processing, and going off in different directions. For Sheer West, after having talked about Grant, Rio Linda, and Del Paso in the district headquarters, the next issue is, would they build a GIGI connection from McClellan to CSU? And then we had to stop for a while and get that kind of settled down, and then go confirm with Comcast that they would build a big pipe from their head end, which is downtown, to CSU. And then had to get the CSU folks in. Are you guys willing to take this ball and run with it and put the boxes in your location and switch everything and do what they needed to do to get the ultimate connection out to SCOE? So that was second phase, the issue of interconnection. The technocrats then beat on me that a single interconnect between the two networks was not enough. So we had to go then to back and address the issue of 2 GIGI pipes coming to some school districts on a duplication basis. The companies felt that that was very costly to do and would not do it. That was a deal breaker. Would not do it across the board. A GIGI pipe is an expensive pipe with the electronics that are on it. So we negotiated that there would be an additional crossover interconnect at San Juan, and to be determined either at Sac City headquarters or Elk Grove headquarters. So the next issue we resolved was where these two networks would overlap. I'm working down the list here. The next question was, would they adopt open architecture standards common to the industry, or would they be going with proprietary equipment? So we worked through on what equipment standards would be used so that they could talk to each other, and that not one company would be using equipment that was proprietary. And then there was a process of all the steps along the way, in Bill's terms, vetting this with the education technologists from each of the school districts. The pilot implementation group wasn't just the 4 Comcast pilot entities, but it expanded to include all of the Sheer West school entities, as well as Los Rios and CSU. So we had to look to be sure that there was compatibility on the larger system, and work through the specifications there. The Sheer West document says that the final specifications will be written in the future, but the core specifications are there on the electronics. The STI piece arose only in the last 4 or 5 weeks, and the question there was, where would there be a connection point to get the Natomas headquarters back into the 30 megahertz network? And it was agreed and negotiated with the last few days with the Sheer West team that the Natomas headquarters would have would be the pickup point, and that Sheer West would go there as well. So all that I've described so far is the gigabit Ethernet backbone. Again, a gigabit is 1,000 megabit. I forget the exact specs, but I think that is the equivalent, the approximate equivalent of what a cable company would use to serve 25,000 homes for internet connections. And that's before you get into the advanced technologies. Now the add-ons. So we have a basic backbone in place with both companies, both being negotiated separately, that came together in the last 10 days. Now the add-ons, the pieces that came on top of this, some of this tied to things we learned since June. One, the original specifications on the Comcast side were for Valley High, not the Elk Grove School District. Comcast, as you'll see, has addressed that. SCOE's relocating, as you know well. We needed to get connectivity from, we need to get the network up and running, but also to address the issue of relocating to the new SCOE and how that was going to be addressed. So those are add-ons that have been put in place, including the termination equipment, that is what equipment is going to be placed at the school district headquarters and who will pay for that. And on the SureWest side, and as I'm trying to describe to you the totality, on the SureWest side, we engage in a conversation on under what modalities, under what way would SureWest agree to wire the schools. Recognize that the vision for the 30 megahertz network goes, the vision goes to the schools, and in my mind, I think not necessarily in the ed sector's mind, goes all the way into the homes. The objectives for the network are to change the way we learn in school, at home, and at work. SureWest has agreed to provide connectivity to the schools as well, and that then brought in another discussion of the technology of how that would interconnect and all the pieces that went on with that. So let me walk you through this agreement. Again, I apologize. This is a process that has been ongoing now and fairly intense for the last several weeks. But I'll summarize for you what SureWest has here, looking at the attachment 2 in today's staff report that was on your desk. SureWest has committed to provide a gigi backbone from their processing center at McClellan to CSU. They've agreed to connect that gigi backbone to the locations listed under district headquarters, which includes Grant, Natomas, Del Paso, Rio Linda, within 30 days of activating their network as it passes by that plant. There's language there that allows those to be substituted if necessary. Additionally, SureWest, as it passes American River College, the Los Rios Community College, and SCOE, it will provide connection on the gigi backbone to those locations as well. We don't have a timeline yet on when SureWest plans to pass those locations. That's subject to their overall build-out agreement that you approved last June. So as time goes forward, we'll know when those will occur. The control points in the document are that within a specified period of days of active plant passing those locations, they are wired. For the schools, it's a smaller pipe, but still a bigger pipe than most of the schools have now that I'm aware of in the county, except maybe for Grant. Grant has some larger technology in place that I don't think is replicated everywhere else, possibly in Elk Grove, but I'm not sure of that. But these are 10 megabit pipes going to the schools. A typical school connection is 1.5 megabits, so this is considerably larger. And it's designed to be a separate network for SureWest. This is not a 10 megabit pipe that is competing with their residential service customers. This is a pipe that may behave the same, but it isn't competing for that traffic. That is for every school that they go by, and we've given them until the end of the year to retrofit any schools that they've already gone by on the 10 megabit pipe. And this then feeds into the 30 megahertz network at the next level down.
Can I ask a question on that point?
Sure.
So, is anybody, I mean, on this issue of any school they go by, so I'm not as familiar with the build hubs for SureWest, although I was briefed on it, but I can't recall off the top of my mind exactly what and when. Are we certain that all the schools will be covered
Bless you.
within each district?
To the extent that SureWest builds their plant and activates it to sell services to customers, the answer is yes. But under your licensing ordinance, the only 2 phases right now that SureWest is committed to is the map that was approved last June. So right now, there is no sanction on SureWest if it did not complete building the whole county. Does that make sense to answer your question?
Well, it does make sense. I mean, I guess the way I'm thinking about it conceptually, if we overlay a map of the 3 districts, and we'll put Natomas aside because Natomas is being handled by STI/SHI. So we're talking about Del Paso, Grant, and Rio Linda. If you overlay a map of the service areas of those districts, and more particularly a map that shows the locations of each of the public schools in those districts, with a map that shows the SureWest build, are there any the SureWest build as currently approved by us, are there any schools that are left out?
I'm not sure. The majority are covered, but I can't picture the map right now to know. Here's the...
Yeah, but I appreciate that, but shouldn't we know that? Because if the agreement is to just link the schools as they build when they pass by them, and I'm not saying that there's anything intentional here, but what if there are some schools that aren't a part of a build, that are a part of a district, that we're looking to SureWest to try to link up?
That's a possibility.
Yeah, well...
I mean, that exists.
So what's the solution?
The issue is, well, there's a couple. One is, first off, the negotiating issue, Mr. Jones, is the cable companies are, at least in SureWest mode, are not going to extend their plant just for the schools. Okay. The business basis here on how this works and why we were able to get the schools incorporated at all is that as they go by, they wire the schools first. Second, to the extent that that may be the case, and there may be one school in Grant, we can ask Jim Chapman, the existing connectivity that those schools have, be it microwave or purchasing circuits from somewhere else, could continue. The third piece is that, as you know, we begin the discussions with Comcast for their second and third phases, and which includes addressing the schools as well. So as we overlay the different pieces, we move towards assuring that they all get wired. But in negotiating with SureWest, I could not secure a commitment that they would, if their business plan, including their engineering plan, says to build this geography and a school is 6 blocks out, I couldn't get them to commit to build to that school because it was part of the district. I can get you a count of which schools are covered and not covered on the overlaying maps and bring that to you.
Yeah, because I think we need to see that, because, I mean, I understand that from an efficiency and cost perspective, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate what SureWest is bringing to the table here. Obviously, it makes sense to do this as they build out, but if we go back to the first cases, which is the 30 megahertz obligation, you know, that's a substantial piece of real estate that we have translated into this network for the schools, and I don't want to leave any schools behind. And so, you know, I'd like to know what the implications are of using this particular approach for particular, you know, for all of the schools in these 3 districts, because, and I'm sure that this is not the case, but until we look at it, we won't know. I mean, what if there are a substantial number of schools in one of these districts that are being left behind? How do we address that? And I'm not certain as I sit here whether that's an issue or not without seeing the overlay of those 2 maps, if you will.
Right. Understand the issue. It's not the intent. First off, recognize that schools, getting to the schools was part of the vision, but not necessarily part of the short-term vision. The fact that we're moving that way this fast is commendable for all parties involved. Again, second, SureWest is one piece. Comcast is the other. Comcast has committed, and again, we'll talk about it in the next item, for what they're obligated for, then some. And we begin soon the discussions with Comcast on how to get the schools wired. It's at that point that when we have the total together, I can more comfortably and realistically answer the question for you. Right now, it's an if it might happen, yes, it might happen. But as we move forward, the goal is to get them all wired. And now whether SureWest picks them up, Comcast picks them up, existing infrastructure suffices, or we have to come to you and say we've got to go out to bid for additional connectivity. I don't know which one it will be, but the goal is to get them all connected.
Well, maybe...
I have agenda management problem.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There are 2 of us that have to leave, and leave within 2 minutes.
Oh.
How many are able to stay?
For about another 20 minutes.
Got 2 minutes.
Yeah, we've already lost
If
one.
two of you
Did
leave,
Mike
you'll
Leary
lose a
leave?
You need to have 6 here for a quorum.
Okay, are we going to have 6? Because 2 of us absolutely have to leave.
You're going to lose me, too.
Well, then we got an agenda management problem that we're going to have to look at. I think everybody figured that 5 o'clock they would be safe for their other community meetings, for the other things that they've got. And, you know,
We need to act on this tonight.
Yeah.
We need to act on this today, right? I think it's important.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, perhaps if the concepts are sufficiently defined on the SureWest proposal, you could adopt a motion authorizing us to bring back the formal written agreement on the 30 megahertz implementation for a next meeting. And then if we could answer some of your questions at the next meeting, and that would allow the planning, et cetera, to go forward.
I'm willing to make the motion to that effect. That
I'll second
we
that.
direct staff to bring back the agreement incorporating the concepts that are presented to us today for the agreement with SureWest.
That's fine.
And then we'll take more questions at that time, though, right? Because I've heard some concerns.
If we can vote on this,
addressed.
I think that we can get some real specificity on this actually within a fairly small period of time. But you know, I was just going to ask Robert, because I think Robert can explain it, but I want to get a vote in before you all leave.
Right, and what Harry just described is pretty close to what the staff recommendation was for today, so that's fine. We can maybe, Ms. Cullen, just someone make that motion, and let's...
It's been moved, and it was seconded, and, you know, and I'm sorry that this came up. I think everyone thought we'd be out of here. We've had all the speakers on the issue that were signed up, though, so with that in mind, let's call the roll.
Jones?
Aye.
Pillsbury?
Yes.
Dickinson?
Aye.
Peters McEwen?
Yes.
Collin?
Yes.
Yee?
Aye.
Nilo?
Yes.
Leary? Shelby? Natoli?
Aye.
Waters? Motion carries.
If possible, it would be very good, it's worth hearing from Comcast for a minute, and at least to accept their
So if the
staff
2 of
report.
us have to leave,
Well, we
we've
can stay
got
in
to
committee,
leave.
though. We
If
can
you
still
can
hear
stay,
Comcast.
Yeah,
I'm going to pass these to the next
No.
closest person.
There is no
I'm
action.
sorry to do that to you, but
There is no action, but to continue from the Comcast piece of the 30 megahertz network, it really is important for you to at least understand a little bit about the strides. I'm sorry, I said Comcast. This is from the SureWest piece to the Comcast piece, to understand the strides that Comcast has made and where they have now come in with more, better, sooner kinds of steps.
Just to
as well.
get to this issue, though, if you look at SureWest's schedule for build-out, North Sacramento, for the most part, is not scheduled for another couple years or so, if I recall. And Robert can answer this more specifically, but Comcast is already there.
That's correct.
So if SureWest never got there, we would just need to make sure that 30 megahertz was extended through Comcast to North Sacramento, so it picked up Martin Luther King Junior High School and Grant and you know, those locations that SureWest wouldn't get. And if SureWest gets there, this works.
That's correct.
And that would hold for the Del Paso School District and the Rio Linda school district, I assume as well.
You seem to remember the language of the settlement with Comcast, that it says essentially that we begin the process, we get the pilot up and running, and then begin the process of negotiating that piece. Between the two of them, I believe we can make it work, but I can't answer specifically which school yet.
Who's chairing the meeting now?
I'm chairing the meeting.
And-
I'm in charge
And
here.
you know what? We're thankful for that.
And you may have the floor, Mr. Jones.
And I'm thankful for that, too. Yes, I mean, I agree with that statement with one caveat, and that is we seem to be moving towards a geographic framework where a given cable franchise or licensee provider within a certain geographic area has responsibility in that geographic area, and to the extent that they're not in another area, then somebody else has responsibility elsewhere. I know it's a little more complicated than that, but what I'm concerned about is that if for some reason Sure West doesn't pass some schools in a particular district, and the alternative is just to say, okay, Comcast, you do that, I'm not sure, I don't know whether that really answers the question, because there may be value to the 30 megahertz in Sure West system, if you will, which exceeds what they may be delivering in terms of just linking up those schools that their network passes. Now, or maybe that's not true because you're actually doing quite a bit more than others, at least initially. So, but all I'm saying is I'm not sure the answer is just, well, gee, if they don't pass by the school, then we go over here.
No,
It may be to say, well, gee, you need to pass by those schools, or it may be some combination of the two. I don't know, but that's, at the end of the day, I want to make sure we connect all the schools. And I know you share that goal too, but it's how that gets translated in these agreements that I'm acutely interested in. So, you wanted to say something, I'm sorry.
But I believe there are multiple alternatives on how each individual school will be addressed, and which ones get picked up by which alternatives, we don't know yet. We know where we're going. We've got one negotiation done, one to go, and then again I would emphasize that there is existing connectivity in place for many of the schools already. The big piece that wasn't there was from, and what the backbone is all about, is getting from the cloud through SCOE to the districts. And that piece is coming along quite nicely. The piece about the schools is more about increasing the bandwidth, and we hope to be able to show you reducing the cost as well. But those pieces tend to already be there for most, if not all, of the schools throughout the county.
Right, but as you have persuaded us and others have persuaded us earlier, those connections exist at a level where there's a great deal of room for improvement, and that is the genesis for our decision collectively to, instead of taking 30 megahertz or 24 megahertz of up and downstream bandwidth out of existing operators, and translate that into this connection that gets us better connections to all of the schools. And so I appreciate the value of the backbone. It's tremendous. It's wonderful. It's a tremendous thing that we're collectively accomplishing with the private sector actually doing all the heavy lifting. But I want to make sure we get to the schools, too.
That's the goal. We recommend that you consider, receive and file, and hear from Comcast on the work that they've done, because they've done a lot as well. And then maybe you can adjourn.
Will that be moving on to item 4 then?
Yes, that's the staff recommendation.
We still have a speaker, don't we?
Beg your pardon? For number 3?
Never mind, I'm confused now. Too many check marks. No, we
Yeah, Liz Rose wanted to speak to item number.
You
we did that, and so did Robert.
Very eloquently, I might add.
See how confused I am?
And so did...
I am in charge. I want everybody to understand that. Okay, so we
Item
are moving
4.
on to item number, we are on item number 4 now.
Correct.
With some trepidation.
Take a chance. Take a
I
chance.
managed to clear the room again. Well, thank you for giving me just a minute. Karen Monroe, Comcast, to talk to, I wanted to bring you just up to date a little more, aside from the 30 megahertz, just a couple things I wanted to point out. One bit of news is that we are making progress on bringing a call center back to Sacramento, and that means, of course, that we will be hiring an additional 300 folks, which is really good news in this day and age. And so we will begin that recruiting and hiring and training process very shortly. We also intend to launch high-definition television very soon. I can't give you the date because it's a secret, but I will be calling each of you to invite you in to see a live demonstration of high definition. I'll be calling in the next week. So that's a hint as to how soon it's going to be launched. 30 megahertz. You have a letter in your packet that sort of gives you an update. Let me just update that progress report. We have finalized we have complete full connectivity among actually 6 of the locations: San Juan Unified School District, Folsom Cordova Unified School District, Sacramento City, USD, SCOE, Elk Grove, and CSUS. We've also ordered all of the equipment, and we have a target date of the week of May 5th to install and activate the equipment. So we'll actually have this thing fired up and going. And with that, let me just say, I'm confident that we're going to meet all of our commitments in the time frame set forth, and we're too eager to hope and intend to see that all the schools get connected. Any questions?
I just want to compliment you for all the great work that Comcast has up to the plate. The obligation, as near as I can tell. So.
Great, thank you.
What number are we on?
Item 5, staff
10.
status report.
Well, no, we can't have. Yeah, and Robert Dugan wanted to speak to number 4 also.
I have nothing further unless Mr. Jones wants to ask me a question.
No, Mr. Dugan, look, I think Sure West is doing a great job, and there's no question that they have gone above and beyond the call, and I don't mean for you to take away from my question any suggestion otherwise. I really appreciate the spirit in which that company has engaged on this issue, and it's exciting to see where we are compared to where we started from. There's some specific details that I have some questions for staff about, but I think it's...
Specific to your questions, and I think Rich did a great job of explaining how our connectivity isn't just a drop to schools, it's actually an interconnection. That, consistent with his desire to make sure that all the providers are providing a piece, that applies for all school districts, all schools that we pass. And as you know, those first 2 phases, A and B, were just our initial proposal for construction because we need to figure out what we purchased. But our business plan and the license you granted us is to go the entire urbanized county. So we will be coming back and we'll keep rolling. The business plan is to stay in this business and to keep building and to add new area and complete that process and have a long tenure as a provider that provides service to the entire urbanized county. So in part, I think that may answer some of your question. Those initial 2 phases were just what we were comfortable when we initially negotiated a license for a company that we had not yet purchased and for network we had not yet seen that we thought we could at least comply with. So we're hopeful that those existing dates and that existing footprint will proceed along much more rapidly than currently proposed.
Thanks. Did we just go back to item number 3? Just kidding. Just kidding.
We're in 5 minutes.
Liz.
I'm not saying anything.
4, yes, it's 4. Item 4. Yes, you're up.
Liz Rhodes, SECC. I think my middle name's going to be 30 megahertz. No, I just, again, wanted to go on the record for this with Comcast, is that, this process has really come together, and Karen and Steve, who weren't introduced to you there, have been absolutely fantastic to work with. They have been very responsive. They have spent a tremendous amount of time with the educators and all of our techies, and really trying to understand what it is we want to do, why we want to do it. And what I appreciate most is how we can do it. And it's not from the approach of we can't do it or it's too difficult or we're not obligated, but it's from the approach of how do we make this work and what it is that you really need. And, you know, in a world where it seems like everything is going crazy, for some strange reason, all of these things are coming together, and you know, we're just thrilled to be a part of it, and we think it's really moving forward nicely. And we, Mr. Jones, have talked a lot about all the schools. As you know, we fought very hard saying that the vision is every single school. And there are lots of conversations going on because there are just some schools that are outside of all service areas, and how are we going to deal with those? And we are grappling with that. So it's real good news, and we are just really pleased with what Comcast has come forward with, and we're excited about working out the final details, and we think we're close with that. So our challenge now is just really beginning, because now we are ready to produce and put something out there that's going to make a difference to our kids. So thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Now that's everybody that was going to speak to all items through item number 4. Does anybody else want to speak to any item on the agenda up to item number 4? Very good. Okay,
I've got about 30 minutes, Roger. I could talk about things.
No, that's out of order, Mr. Pillsbury. Moving ever so swiftly along.
To be almost like Congress, where you speak into a dead audience.
We have item 5, staff status report.
We've covered it. We're fine.
Have we beat this puppy to death now?
It's puppy to death, sir.
Okay.
We're wearing the board down. There's only 3.5 left. Joey's got 1 foot out the door, and there's 3 left, so
This
keep
does
going.
go to show you that sometimes even leadership can just be a matter of just showing up. Just by hanging out here, I have become in charge, and by virtue of being in charge, I now adjourn this meeting.
How do you
Thank you,
adjourn a meeting that doesn't have a quorum?
Yeah.
An interesting variant is to actually use some of the federal block grant monies to fund those programs at the local level, to put the money into the pockets of people, in this case in Sacramento. Now, another aspect of this, and it gets back to my comment a second ago about how difficult it is to fill out the forms and for a family to get the earned income tax credit that they're entitled to. Because of that, the participation in a program is low. The literature says that less than half of the eligible families in most jurisdictions are actually participating in it. So another alternative program that's been experimented with at the local level is to develop a means of assisting the eligible families with actually procuring the earned income tax credit for them. A couple of examples out of the literature. Chicago estimated that it was able to deliver $3 million to low-income families with a $200,000 program. Tulsa claims they generated $13 million from a $70,000 program, which would be about $180 to 1 ratio. The purpose of that memorandum, again, was to just describe some of the existing programs that have been attempted to help with the working poor. And that essentially is the presentation part of the first 30 minutes, so hopefully we're well on track and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. Because now I'd like to describe more of what was certainly the larger research effort and the larger report that we did, the analysis of the proposed ordinance, here in Sacramento. Again, two of the major research efforts for this were this research into the literature. The second one was, rather than rely entirely upon the written academic studies that are out there, to go out and actually contact other California cities and counties that have had experience dealing with the living wage to date. And in those interviews and conversations, the faxes and emails we had with these different California jurisdictions, we were looking for what their experience has been with administrative costs. We were looking at what kinds of other studies they had done of the effectiveness of the programs. Every one of these effects of how much of the costs appeared to being passed through to the cities, how much of a ripple up effect there appeared to be, and I'll explain some of those terms in a minute. But we were looking at the experience of other cities currently, in essence doing our own research comparable to some of those that were in the studies in the literature. What we've found and documented in a report are quite a few benefits and some unintended consequences that come from living wage programs elsewhere in California and in fact elsewhere in the country through the literature search. There's basically laundry lists on both sides of the pros and cons of a living wage. On the positive side, benefits. There are increased wages. That is the most obvious and the most direct effect of an increase in the living wage. There is a decrease in poverty. There's an increase in morale and the productivity of the workers, a lower absenteeism, less turnover. There should be higher efficiencies in the provision of services, and ultimately, as people come off of the welfare rolls, there's less reliance on government aid, increased self-sufficiency, increased spending in the local economy, and that money has a multiplier effect as it circulates through the regional economy. It's good for community building. All of those, logical and intuitive things, are certainly documented in the literature. There are also unintended consequences of various, with various degrees of substantiation in the literature. There's the potential for loss of employment through a variety of mechanisms. There's a substitution effect where either higher skilled workers or technology is used instead of the lower wage workers who had previously been doing the same things. There's a possibility of businesses closing. There's a possibility of companies leaving the region because of the presence of a living wage. One of the bigger ones also is the potential for reduced hours of the people who previously were doing the contract work. There's a potential for lower quality of service. There's a side effect in a sense that a living wage will also assist people who are not specifically targeted, meaning people who really aren't low-wage households or low-income households, but have a low-wage earner. Often this is a teenager or a second-wage earner in the household. There was some discussion earlier, there's a challenge to economic development efforts. And as Mr. Medema pointed out, it's not something that anybody yet has been able to quantify, but every economic development expert will say, oh yes, there's an effect there. As I said before, many of these benefits and many of the unintended consequences are not substantiated in the literature or in the research that we've done ourselves. But here's the ones that we've come to the conclusion that we can really say with some confidence what does work and what doesn't, and again, still at a conceptual level. Number one, there is evidence that a living wage does increase the wages for low-income workers. There's also evidence that the living wages are modestly successful at reducing urban poverty. As with most public policies, there are winners and losers of such a thing. There are costs that will most likely be shared by a combination of the private employers, the city, the taxpayers, consumers, and potentially even some of the workers themselves. There's evidence that living wage ordinances do lead to some loss of employment and some decrease in hours for those who remain employed. Another interesting thing that we've discovered is that local living wage ordinances often end up replacing federal and state subsidies with local subsidies. And that's again through the mechanisms of existing programs where people come off of federal programs and end up being supported more at the local level, at the city level in this case. And as I mentioned before, there's also evidence that the benefits of living wage ordinances also end up benefiting affluent households that just happen to have low wage earners in them.